Hey everybody, it's Matt Wright, Superintendent of Moore Tree School District. I want to bring you a quick video. This has become a pretty handy way of getting information out and getting out a lot of information to a lot of people. And I also think that it gives you a look into the window of some of the decision-making processes that we have. And as many of you have heard, and as unpopular as it is, we are not going to play football Friday night. I want to take a few minutes to tell you why, but before I do that, I want to begin by apologizing to the young men and women that are being impacted. I haven't got to do that yet face to face. That time's going to come. I know you want to play. I know you want to cheer. I know you want to perform in the band. I know that the coaches and the cheer coaches and the band instructor, I know that they all want to have their Friday nights back. If you didn't want to play and if you didn't want to perform, then you're not the competitors or the representatives of the district that I hoped that you were or are. So that frustration, that anger, I get it. I totally get it. I used to live Friday nights. I know how much I enjoyed them, and I know how much I treasure those memories, and I want for you to be able to have those same memories. But if you'll watch this, I hope that you'll at least understand some of the why and what went into this. We want you to play. I want you to play. There's a bigger picture that's got to be considered. So let me start off by telling you the things that concern me. First, the number of school districts that have been identified as having an abnormal amount of COVID cases doubled in the past week. Now, unfortunately, we're one of those districts. So's our opponent, Cedar Ridge. So there was going to be some risk involved for playing them, those kids on the field. There's going to be some risk in bringing those two communities together for having two communities that have high spread, bringing those two communities together. But as you have high spreads within your community, or high spread within your community, just by putting people in the bleachers, we increase the problems for Moore Tree. And so there was a community decision that had to be made, along with the safety of our players and our students. But mostly it was this. Guys, we haven't been able to practice or play since October the 6th. We're going on 2 weeks and 2 days. Today's the first day that we're going to be able to practice since October the 6th. As the positive cases occurred, as close contacts were identified 2 weeks ago, it was obvious that this surge was going to impact every aspect of our school. And if we being the district, if we were going to get our situation under control, we had to pause everything. Hindsight being 2020, I think it's a good thing that we did, because as time passed during the closure, there were people in and around the football program that were impacted, that would have come in close contact with our players and our coaches, which could have made a bad situation even worse. So I think that taking that pause, taking that 2-week break, it was definitely what we had to do. So late last week, started really thinking about how this week needed to play out. And I spent a lot of time over the weekend debating the pros and cons of practicing and playing. As we got to this week, on Monday, I badly wanted to allow practicing games. But at the same time, the health and safety of our players, it has to override the wants and desires of my heart, of our students' hearts, of the parents' hearts. We've got to do everything that we can to be safe. And on Monday, I started visiting with other coaches, other superintendents, but mainly, and most importantly, I got to visit with some medical professionals. So on Monday afternoon, I visited with some athletic trainers from Arkansas State, because ASU had experienced a very similar situation to what we had. They had some student athletes that were impacted by positive tests, and either they had positive tests or they were close contacts, and they had to cancel a game. And so many of those players, they were going to come back to the middle of late part of another week. Well, their program had been completely shut down. They wasn't getting to do the conditioning they needed to do to maintain that peak performance. They were worried about the risk factors that were involved with the lack of conditioning. As players start to lose that conditioning, there's an increased risk of injury. And so since they didn't get to have a full week of practice and slowly ramp their players back up to full speed and then game speed, they decided that risk of injury was too great. And so they canceled or postponed a second game. Um, and they went in depth to why they did that. And now we're talking about a Division I football team with a roster of around 70 to 80 kids. What that does for them is it gives them the flexibility to have a depth chart that runs 2 or 3 deep at some positions, maybe even more than that. Y'all, Martree School District does not have 70 or 80 kids on this football team. We do not have the luxury of being able to run kids in and out 2 to 3 deep at every single position. Some of our players on our little football team, guys, they never come off the field. If we, with a day of practice, tried to go play a football game with kids who have some guts, kids who don't look at you and say, "Coach, I'm tired. I need to come out." That's not what football players do. We're going to run the risk of having unneeded injuries to your child. Not a football player, not a student athlete, your child. And that's the question that I try to ask myself. What would I want for somebody to do with my child? I would want someone to put the safety of my child, the health of my child, I would want that to come first. That's what I want for us to do here in this district. I want us to treat your kids like we would want to treat our kids. I think that makes us better educators. I think that makes us better coaches. I think that makes us a better district. And if we would have played a game Friday night, we were asking for trouble. I didn't stop there. I also reached out to an orthopedic surgeon who does a number of surgeries for ASU. Told him our situation, described to him what we'd been through. He listed several concerns. He went on to say that even some of our close contacts likely had COVID and were asymptomatic. He talked about the possibilities there and the concerns there. After he talked about the implications that all those situations, the lack of conditioning, possibly having kids have COVID that didn't know it, he went on to say that the situation for our school, for our football team that we're dealing with, if we would have played Friday night, this is a quote, he said, that is a recipe for disaster. Y'all, football's full of inherent risks. As fans, as parents, as players, that's nothing new. You can also sprain an ankle getting out of bed. But there's a reason why we practice so many weeks before we play our first game. There's a reason why we have so many practices before we go full pads. There's a reason that time constraints exist on the frequency and the duration of practices. It's all about keeping kids safe. The advice that I was given earlier as an educator is when there's an increased risk to the safety of students, you decrease that exposure to your students. And so because we had that increased risk, because we had that increased risk, we've got to decrease the possibilities for our kids. We cannot just say it's okay for that increased risk of injury to exist for our players. And the advice that I got from athletic trainers, from orthopedic surgeons, people who are significantly smarter than I am, they say you need a full week. You need a full week of practice for your kids to be ready. So you can get hurt walking down a sidewalk. You can sprain an ankle getting out of bed in the mornings. That some of that's just life. But knowing that increased risk exists, I think that's where there's a moral and an ethical responsibility to act and to do what is right. I'm sorry. I really am. Especially for those kids who are losing Friday night. But knowing that that we're going to wake up Saturday morning and that our kids aren't going to be injured, that they are going to be healthy, and that we're going to have a chance to gear up for homecoming and EPC next week, I think that is definitely not having a game this week. I think that's definitely the right thing to do. So I hope you understand. There's no easy way to get around this. I've said it before. It's easier to throw stones than it is to make tough decisions. But I'm going to make those tough decisions with the safety of your child being the number one influencer. And so I hope you agree. I hope you understand. If not, I'm always here to visit with you, and I'd be willing to field any phone calls, emails, or even sit down and visit with you. So have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you for homecoming next week as our junior high team faces Rector for a conference championship, and as our high school football team gets ready to play EPC. Have a good week.